So good morning, everybody. As many of you may know, because of the last video, about maybe a month ago, my wife asked me something that scared the life right out of me.
I want a new bicycle.
What? So in this video, I'm not really gonna hit the specs, but I am gonna weigh it. That's gonna be at the end of the video, so stick around for that. But if you do wanna see the specs, just check back with that previous video. Since this is a bike that is actually going to be in my household, like I said, we're going to ride it. If you do enjoy this content, please hit subscribe, like the video, and I'm going to keep pushing out these first impressions, races, bicycles, my love of cycling out to you guys. Let me give you a little background as to where I am coming from. Maybe that will help you a little bit because, you know, I am one of these like thorough people. If someone's telling me a review of a bicycle, like let's say it's my best friend, he's like, man, I got this new bike and I'm in love with it. I want to know the 5 previous bikes that he was on, the kind of riding he does, because all of that needs to be taken into account when you're listening to someone tell the pros and cons of a bike. So my history is that I have never truly ridden a gravel bike. I've ridden them around parking lots, but I've never actually ridden a gravel bike off-road. I am a cyclocross guy through and through. So what a cyclocross bike is, if you do not know, cyclocross is a sport that the highest end of the sport lasts 1 hour. So this is a very short, very intense cycling event. Cyclocross bicycles are made for you to be able to turn very sharply, and average speeds are under 20. Very much so under 20 most of the time, especially when it's super muddy. That's what I'm coming from, that and mountain biking, obviously. So that's what I have to compare it to. Right off of the bat, when I hit the gravel and started bouncing around, I did really notice how comfortable this bike is. My first ride, I didn't feel out of place. Nothing felt like I needed to go tweak it, which usually is not the case. The bike felt very comfortable even in the chunky gravel. I will put a preface on that. I think that is mainly because I'm so in love with the GRX components. My hands fit like a freaking glove on those things. The ergonomics of the levers feel great, and the big tires on this thing make a big difference. So this bike coming with 38s, I think the internal rim width on this bike is 20. Which is pretty wide. So these bigger tires being tubeless and the ergonomics of the shifters, the bike felt great. And then we can talk about the defuse seat and seat post combination. If you've never ridden defuse, I suggest you at least ride it once because this is very weird. It's not weird like you notice it while you're riding it, like it's gonna take away from your ride or something. But when you start focusing in on your rump, your butt, you can feel a lot in the handlebars, you can feel a lot in the pedals, but when you sit down on that saddle, it's muted. So your butt is not taking a beating on these gravel rides, which is something that I really love because I love having, like, on a road bike, I love the road feel. I don't like it to be completely muted, like what I think the Synapse does from Cannondale. Big plus in the comfort department. So I think the biggest way I can describe where I was coming from and how this bike now feels to me is this thing rides more like a fully rigid mountain bike than anything else. That's the closest thing I can compare it to. It does not feel like a cyclocross bike. And when I ride it on the road, it feels like I'm riding like a Giant Defy, if this is making any sense at all. But when I was off-road, I was completely confident on any of the descents. Big chunky rocks and roots came up, I just plowed through them. I didn't even care about the bike. I did care about the bike because it's not mine. You know what I mean? Like I didn't think the bike wasn't gonna make it through a lot of this stuff. I knew it was gonna be a little rough because it's a fully rigid bike, obviously. It's a gravel bike, but that's what it felt like. It felt like I was on a fully rigid mountain bike, and I think that's because of how well it handles. I have not actually ridden like a drop bar mountain bike before. I know those are kind of popular from Salsa. This thing, handling wise, it was great. So also I severely noticed that the bike felt super light and super stiff, but you have to take that with a grain of salt because I'm used to riding my full suspension mountain bike on this trail. So when I hop on this puppy and take it out there, it feels like a rocket ship. So let's move on to the climb. There is a hellacious little climb out here. You have to start off slow into the climb. That's another reason why it's so bad. It is straight up in the air. Once you get over that little hump, it's just a grind all the way to the top. But that first little hump, I really thought this bike would spin out having 38s on it and having to put more air pressure. My mountain bike, I'm usually running like 18 in the front and like 20 in the back. This bike, I left it at the recommended air pressure. I know I can go lower because I've done it plenty of times before, but for testing purposes, I put it at 50. That was the lowest the tires recommend going. I had in my head that I was already gonna screw up and spin and have to unclip. Those tires gripped pretty dang good, and I never once felt like I wasn't gonna make it up the climb. Yeah, the climb was tough, but this freaking thing, it goes. And another big difference between this and like a cross bike, whenever I descend on my cross bike, on anything remotely chunky, even on road, honestly, kind of feels a little skatey, like I'm surfing the bike all the way down the descent. This thing was very planted, very, very, very stable on descents, which I really like because on some of the gravel races that I've done, those courses have some chunky descents on the gravel. That's where I tend to lose time. And I feel like a bike like this would severely help me coming down some of those sketchy climbs. Or I guess they're descents if you're going down. I think this is gonna be a great bike. The number one upgrade I would do, actually probably the only upgrade I would do to this bike, is a wheel set. The model up from this retails at about $3,700 and does come with a full carbon wheel set. This bike, on the other hand, the wheel set's rather heavy, but it's a good bomb-proof wheel set. So I would definitely look into buying a new wheel set if you wanted to have this as like a race gravel bike, and keeping these things for if you wanted to go ride the mountain bike trails. But for the price point, you can't really complain with the Grupo that you're getting. This is a nicely spec'd bike. I at least have to tell myself that because we paid for it. Also, this could solely be that this is my first true experience with a gravel bike, but I was smiling ear to ear the whole time I rode it. I did not expect this thing to feel like a fully rigid mountain bike on a mountain bike trail. The biggest con I can say about the bike that was just in the back of my head this whole time, well, in reality, it's not so much a con, but it's something that really does need to be talked about. So the fit is freaking weird. And okay, so backing up, about 3 months ago, a friend of mine bought a Revolt, a higher end Revolt, and he's always ridden medium large in a Giant road bike. We got him a medium large in the Revolt. Top tube length, his reach was perfect, spot on that bike. With the seat at the same seat height that his road bike was at, because that's what he's comfortable riding at, right? The seat minimum insertion length was a little bit too high. He wasn't comfortable riding the bike like that. Obviously nobody should, because you don't want to break your frame if the seat post is not in the frame far enough. Now to mitigate this, he bought a new seat post. It has to be a proprietary defused seat post that goes into this bike, but he bought a new one. He bought a longer one, and the bike fits like a glove now. In all reality, I thought maybe he just fits odd on a gravel bike, because unless you're buying a true custom bike, you do have to typically tweak some things. That's not the case. I have always ridden medium in a Giant road bike. I ride about a 55. So this is a medium in the Revolt. The same exact thing happened to me. So I jacked the seat up to right where it says minimum insertion just so I can ride the bike for the weekend. And for an hour and a half ride, the seat's high enough for me. So if you actually put the lasers on me, I'm actually at the low end of the proper seat height for myself. So it's not terrible, but it does need to be raised up if I'm gonna ride it where I ride my road bike. And that's weird. I did throw my leg over a medium large, and that thing felt way too stretched out, way too long for me. I was definitely reaching for the handlebars. So I'm not sure what that's about, but if you guys have any suggestions, let me know. I'm the second person that this has been a problem with. Everyone else has had, maybe I just have long legs, maybe he's got long legs. I don't know, but I do find it odd. We both had the same exact issue. Giant does offer a longer seat post, so that's the best option. It's something to think about when you're buying this bike, I guess. So I don't know if that's really a con or if it's just, it is what it is. Either way, once you get the seat height at the correct height, the bike rides. It rides great. So now, let's move on to weighing this puppy, and let's nail that down real quick. £21, 3 ounces. That's not terrible for a gravel bike that retails at this price point, especially with those wheels. You do have to remember though, I put on this bottle cage. That probably takes off maybe 3 pounds if we just take that one off. But in all seriousness, I think with a new set of wheels on this thing, actually, I'm really curious. I'll put up an update probably whenever I put on the new tires, because I think the new tires, they're gonna be 32s, so, you know, take that for what you will. I think that's gonna knock a pound off of this bike, because that's a lot of rubber. On top of that, I really think crankset and wheels, this bike would probably be 18, 19 pounds easily. Yeah. And there you have it, everybody. That is about all that I have for you. This is my first impression ride of the Giant Revolt Advanced 2. We have a lot of mountain bike racing coming up. I don't know if I will do a video on each individual race because I've got 4 weekends of racing coming up, but I'm at least gonna do like one video every 2 races. We do have a lot of bikes coming in at the moment. They're all pre-sold, so I'm gonna try and pump those guys out as best I can. But I will see everybody in the next one. Later. I'm freaking weird.
Couple sector.